Hey, business storytellers, how's everyone doing? Fantastic. I unmuted myself, so that's a good start to the day. And today we want to talk about audio branding. And I'm interested to learn about this topic because, quite frankly, I had put that on the back burner for a long time. I didn't even have a real mic. This is like a relatively new thing. I got this in December, and now we're in April. Before that, I said, "Oh, you don't need a mic. Just use your AirPods, use your phone." And partially that's not untrue. You can use your phone, but 2 million podcasts are now out there. Good audio branding is indeed a differentiator. So it's moved up my list of priorities. And today I want to talk to an expert on the topic, Jodi Krangle. She's a voiceover actress and an expert on audio branding. I'd be interested to hear her feedback on any of my audio content assets. For example, my opening. And I can tell you guys, once again, I took the shortcut. The shortcut is, hey, honey, can you record an opening? Here, I just wrote it. So that was my wife. She's not here. She doesn't watch the show. So Jodi can give us honest feedback. It'll never go beyond me and you guys. So let's get her out of the green room here. Jodi Krangle, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
So, what do you think? The opening, huh? Could she make it as a voiceover actress or maybe stick with her day job?
She's not bad, but I think the recording environment leaves much to be desired.
Oh, yes, because literally I just held my phone in front of her like this, and that
Yeah.
was kind of the environment. So, let's kind of start at the top here. First of
Mhm.
all, audio branding. Why is that your priority? Why is it important? How did you get started
Huh.
in that area?
Well, I got curious is what happened. I have always loved sound. I've been a singer since probably when I started talking. And I just always have loved sound. So when I got into voiceovers, and that was around 13 years ago, I started in 2007. So I've been full time for a while. And around November of 2019, I was in a business mastermind, and everyone that I knew of was starting a podcast. And we were all kind of looking at each other going, well, what do we want to talk about? What are we passionate about? And sound has always been something I've been passionate about. So audio branding kind of seemed like a no brainer to me because as a voice actor, I'm a tiny little part of one of my clients' audio brands. So it made sense to me to ask my clients questions about what made them happier with their own audio brand. And yeah, that just worked for me. So are we frozen? I think we are. Uh-oh.
No, I can hear you.
You can hear
Everything
me.
seems to
Okay.
be working. And audio is most important for today's show.
That is
Um,
true.
what's interesting, I do so many of these live streams. I don't even like
Mhm.
I'm looking, I'm like, yeah, you're frozen. You'll be back in a minute. The
Okay,
other
yeah.
the other day, I actually had a guest who totally disappeared. Like we're talking and he's
Oh,
gone. And so he came back and his video didn't come back. So I just put up his name and said voice of Ryan Carruthers.
I see.
And
Okay.
like you just got to roll with it. That's the world
Okay.
we live streamers live in.
We'll roll with it.
We'll roll with
Okay.
it. So interesting story, and you certainly have made it like your full time engagement for whatever that's been 14 years. Awesome.
Well, voice
Um,
acting has been my
Voice acting.
full-time engagement. Yeah. The audio branding came around later, and mostly it came about by being curious because I was curious about what the people who were hiring me were thinking of. I was curious about what an audio brand meant to my clients and how I could contribute to that. And so I've been asking a lot of questions, not only about audio in advertising, because it influences everything that we buy.
Mhm.
We buy based on emotions and then we try to logically explain it to ourselves, right? This is how it works. So it's all an emotional game. And sound is one of those things that gets to our hearts super quickly and really deeply. So it really is the best way to emotionally reach your clients. And it just seemed like a no-brainer to sort of study this, because as a part of it, I wanted to know what was happening. But also beyond that, I mean, I talk with storytellers, I talk with podcasters, I talk with people who help you improve the quality of your own voice. I talk with people who are casting directors in the voiceover area. I talk with people who are healers using sound for healing. So ASM artists and people who use tone therapy and binaural beats. And I actually just talked with an audiologist who was talking about how we can protect our hearing and how you
Mhm.
can work with children who have hearing loss or hearing disabilities and need to learn how to navigate the world while they have this, and help for their parents as well. So there's a lot of really important topics around the area of sound. And rather than saying that I'm an audio branding expert, I would say that I am a facilitator and a guide. So I have the podcast, I'm learning a ton, and I always love about this, but I'm not an audio brander myself. I don't actually have a company that does that. So I just want to make
Mhm.
sure that people understand that if they want an audio brand, I definitely can point them in the right direction,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be me. I love the voiceover aspect of
Yeah,
it.
typically I just assume everybody that comes on here, they're an expert. So I just call them that on whatever topic.
Sure.
Audio branding expert. So good differentiation. So it's interesting. So we really have a couple of different ways to think about this, right? First of
Mhm.
all, you have the audio branding of whatever it is you're producing. So for example, we'll work on the in production environment when my wife records a voiceover, or I could hire somebody like you to do it.
Mhm.
Um, but we have that, right? It's like the first impression. I mean, if it already doesn't sound good to, unless they're really invested already. And
Yeah.
then we also have like the personal kind of, right? Like how do I work on my voice and sound differently if I don't like it? And I don't know, I'm not in love with how I sound on podcasts, but I also don't hate it. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't think anybody, I don't know who say they love it anyways, but I also don't hate it. So so when brands come to you,
Mhm.
how do they even determine health? Uh, People who need to have everything perfect. So they're natural. They're never going to go ask their spouse to record it.
Yeah.
Then they have people like who are just going to go do it. And at some point they go, maybe it's time to upgrade from my spouse. That didn't sound right, but you know,
Yeah.
and so like how do brands come to you? What's like the trigger point for them to realize they need better audio?
Well, unfortunately, part of what I'm, I guess, fighting, and I'll put this in quotation marks because that's a little strong a word, but what I'm trying to get people to think about is the fact that their audio is just as important as their visual. So a lot of people will spend a ton of time and a ton of money on their logo and their font and their colors. They'll have books that outline this for everybody in their company so that it's consistent throughout every touch point that they have. And that's great. That is definitely a big part of branding. But if they don't follow through with the audio part of that, and they just tack it on at the end of a video or in a video, they just use whatever music they can find at a license-free directory, then they're going to probably either duplicate what their competitors are using, or someone else in a completely different area that they're not even involved in is using the same music they are. Or, and the voiceover as well should be a reflection on who the brand is. So all of this is a part of what makes the brand DNA differentiate itself from other people in the market. And really, when it comes down to what's going on right now, where a lot of things are audio first, we're talking about Alexa and Google Home and all of these, voice only activated software pieces. How do you differentiate yourself when there are no visuals? You got to think about that these days. And there's a lot more accessibility to audio than there is to the visual aspect of this, if you think about it, because actually, I'm gonna sort of quote someone that I have interviewed on my show. His name is Terry Fisher, Dr. Terry Fisher, and he talks a lot about voice AI. And what he says, and this is a really interesting quote from him, he says that voice is his original OS. So it's his original operating
Mhm.
system is voice. That's really the same for all of us. So up until this point, we have done a lot of development of computers and everything that we do to make our lives easier, we've had to adapt to it. So we've had to learn how to type, we've had to learn how to swipe on a screen, we've had to learn how to
Mhm.
operate all of this stuff, right? But now we're getting to the point where the computers are starting to adapt to us. So they're adapting to us by allowing us to use voice activation
Mhm.
because that is our original operating system. Voice, we hear it from the moment we're from actually the moment, almost the moment we become a human being in our mother's womb. I mean, we
Mhm.
hear first. So that is really where everything should be going. And I think that'll make it easier for everyone. You're even talking about the elderly being able to use an Alexa or Google Home device to make sure that they get their medication, or like it can program out all of this stuff for them without them having to do anything. They don't have to touch a screen. They don't have to type. They don't have to know how to operate a computer. All they need to do is talk. And
And
that's,
Jody, and
I mean, it's just so basic.
I mean, it is, and thank you so much for almost not saying the digital assistants' names. She didn't go off, but I got them both nearby. So,
Okay, yeah.
but my funnest story when it comes to the one with an A, the Amazon one,
Uh-huh.
is I'm on a call and I say they said something like they asked me a question. I said, well, sometimes whatever, and she goes, now playing sometimes Britney Spears. I'm like, what? So some of these devices are really like they're kind of human to
Yeah.
an extent because you know they also don't hear us correctly sometimes. I was talking to Naz Urbina this morning, and he runs Urbina Consulting,
Mhm.
OmniX channel conference coming up later this year, and he said, and I don't know why we got to content. Maybe we were talking about this interview today,
Sure.
and he said so if you're on a call and the video goes away, but the audio still works, are you going to continue the call? Yes. But if the audio goes away and the video is still there, are you going to
No
continue the
way.
call? No way, right? Same thing here. We would continue if we lose the video for some reason. But so very interesting. And of course, it is a differentiator to have good audio, quite frankly, because all
Yeah,
these podcasts and everybody out there. How so it looks like you're in a sound booth. Is
I
that
am.
correct? So what's
It
your
is.
setup?
I am in a 5x4 sound treated booth that I had custom made for me. So it has my coloring on it.
Yeah.
And I'm using a Sennheiser 416 mic, which is a shotgun mic. That is a standard in the voice acting community. So pretty usual. And not a cheap mic. Also really good for travel because originally it was made to be on boom poles in film.
Hmm.
So, these things are they're workhorses. They'll survive just about anything. But it's great for cutting out room noise when you're in an environment that isn't as planned as your home environment. I also have a TLM 103, which is a Neumann mic, which is a large condenser mic again, but mostly I use that one for singing. So that has a bit of a better sound for the whole you sort of want a little bit of room noise with a singing mic. You don't want it completely dead. The reason that I'm in this kind of an environment is because when I'm recording for my clients doing voiceover, they want as pristine and dead a sound as possible so that they can add all the color onto it later. So what the Sennheiser 416 does is it makes the voice pop just a little bit in the mix, and that works really well for advertising and corporate narration and that kind of thing, which is most of what I do.
Corporate narration. What's corporate
Mhm.
narration? What do you mean by that?
Narrating for corporations on their websites, internal presentations, trade shows, web videos that they put on their social media. I do a lot of anthem videos, and I actually really love them. Those are the ones that you see on a company website that are all about, you know, we are and we're love those types of videos. They are really fantastic, and that is a very unflattering picture to focus on there. I just noticed my freeze on the video, and it was not a good position.
It never is. It never is. But
It never is. You're right.
most importantly, your audio was fantastic.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
yesterday was April Fool's Day. We actually
Yes.
ran a fun campaign over at Vox Pop Me, and I wrote a script.
Mhm.
And of course, I've written scripts, for many years, even it was funny. I had a flashback when you were talking about the boom mic, because I actually used to do video production where I
Okay.
would have somebody stand over here with a boom mic,
Yeah.
over them. I would be looking at it and telling, people what to do and what not to do and, whatever, be more conversational. But the script, if I may say so much, the show, the Real Talk, the Customer Insights show, I don't know if they're in the bottom here on Amazon. I'll feature them for a minute if they are. They're not. I don't know why not. But anyway, so when they actually read it on air, and I don't typically recommend to read scripts on a podcast, just have a conversation. But it sounded pretty good, if I may say so myself. And I don't know,
Sure.
maybe it's partially because they were really doing a good job and I had a halfway decent script. But when people send you scripts, I mean, how often do you nobody can say this or ever would.
Well, a lot of corporate narrations can be like that because it's corporate speak. A lot of it is like industrial and, this kind of some tech speak and that kind of thing. But I mean, it's my job to make it sound like anyone could say it, right? It's my job to make it sound like I'm not reading from a page and that I'm having a, honest conversation with someone. And it is part of a conversation. You kind of have to use theater of the mind, even if you need to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it is a performance, but it's a performance where you are actually acting no matter what you're doing. Because even if it's advertising, even if it's a corporate anthem or something like that, you have to have some kind of a scene in your head because you see where I'm coming to you from right now, right? I have headphones on my head. I'm talking into a mic. I'm looking at a screen and I'm in a booth with no one. I'm in a padded room with no one here. So that is a really not natural environment to be doing this kind of thing from. So you really have to live in your head when you do this. Because if you don't have some kind of a scene going in your head while you're doing it, it can sound really fake. And right now, people's BSO meters are so high. So I need to make sure that anything that I do sounds real.
So the BSO meter, that's very interesting. I just saw a site and I think it's been being shut down or it's not updating anymore. It's a German site.
Mhm.
And I tried to figure out how it was translating. I think the best translation was the dumb talk meter, and you can put in your website and it gives you a score. And there were some websites, 10, 30, that's not too bad. And then going into, 130, there was one with 403. I don't know how high it goes, but it's kind of interesting, like some of these corporate websites and corporate slogans, it's just so much marketing gobbledygook. Be real,
Yeah.
share what matters and whatnot. So, obviously, so I've been preaching everybody, if you're going to do a podcast, for example, live stream the podcast, I mean, right here, we're reaching many more people already just because we're live. Even though, guys, I should say LinkedIn did not trigger for some reason. So we will share the link to YouTube in that post later. That's technology, and you got to do what you got to do. The show must go on. So when you So you're in a room, but that's not necessarily how most everybody should set up their setting, right? Like if I'm just a podcast host, I mean, I'm okay doing this, or do I need to think about getting a room, or is that really more when I need the more, you know, the higher quality stuff for the beginning and maybe in the middle and the end or something like that?
I would start with sound treating your room, whatever room you happen to be in. And when I say sound treating, I don't necessarily mean that you have to spend, thousands of dollars or anything. You really don't. But what you want is a room that has maybe less hard surfaces. You probably don't want to have your mic on a stand on the desk because the desk itself can transmit a lot of noise. When you're moving or you're touching the desk or whatever, that transmits through the mic, through the stand.
Well, hold on a
So,
second though. But what? That's exactly my setup. So my mic
uh-huh.
is hooked up to the
Yeah.
desk. And now
But that's an arm. That's an arm, right?
it is. Yeah, but it's
Okay.
hooked up to the desk, which goes up
Okay.
and down.
Okay. But that's fine. Like if you're clamped onto the desk and it's an arm that moves,
Oh,
that's okay. I think you're good
okay.
with that. But when you're talking about like a tri stand or something like that, like you'd use for a camera or something like that.
Hmm.
A lot of people have this little stand that they'll put on their desk and then they'll talk directly into the microphone. And if the mic is too close and if you're talking to it directly on, you're going to get a whole lot of plosives. So popped peas and all sorts of stuff like that all over the place. It's going to sound loud and clip all over the place and you don't want that. That's just not good. What I meant by the stand was that if the stand is on the desk in front of you, if you knock the desk, if you move your feet under the desk, you're going to probably have that sound transmit through the stand
Yeah.
into the mic, and it's going to get into your recording.
I hear you, and I know you're probably seeing this already backstage. I want to show you guys my setup really quickly, and give a quick shout out to switcherstudio.com. That's what we use to live stream. So here it is. That's my iPad. That's my studio. Very interesting, right? I got my ring light right up there. I got my camera right up there, which technically I could put right there.
Mhm.
But why wouldn't I use two tripods if I have them? And then my mic, take a look. My mic is actually
Okay.
set up
Yep.
like this.
Mhm.
And then it's so you were saying that's okay, right? Because it's pretty
It
it's
should work.
like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. There is a certain amount of I guess give built
Mhm.
into an arm like that. It's just that the when you're talking about a stand that just sits on your desk in front of you, there's no give on that. It's like the stand directly into the mic, and that is possibly going to cause you problems. For a podcaster, I started saying that a condenser mic is just better, but I have kind of gone back on that because for a podcaster, I think you want to hear less of your room. And to hear less of your room, you really need a dynamic mic. So that will help in any environment. But, lower ceilings, not so many hard reflective surfaces around you, that can help a lot. A lot of people will, I've seen people build, not pillow forts, but, that kind of thing. Um, when I first started in voiceover, what I did was I put curtain rods up on the ceiling in a
Mhm.
square, and then I hung moving blankets, and I could move the moving blankets away if I didn't need the studio. But the moving blankets helped a lot, and if you did something like that, or if a podcaster did something like that in a room, it would probably help them a lot. And also, you could use that background as a bit of a green screen because you could hang something on it, or you could, any kind of uniform background can usually work pretty well for Zoom, for instance, as a place to do a green screen background. It needs to be green, obviously, if you're going to do it on something like what you're on here or in StreamYard or something like that. But,
Mhm.
yeah, but there's lots of things that you can do to cut down on the reflection in your room because you want to hear less room noise and more voice.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so easy to forget about those things, and then sometimes you have to. This is actually maybe the one reason why you do need to listen to your own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because you can hear. First of all, you hear the stupid filler words that you should stop using. So, for example,
Yes.
I always say "right," "oh right," is that right? Yes, that right. And then people usually disagree with me. But in general, I know some of the words that I shouldn't be using, and I also hear if I like the audio or not. So very, very interesting. How so when you do like podcasts, so you have on podcasts or live streams, right? I kind of
Mm-hmm.
bundle them together. You have like the opening, and then like, do you also record things like for the middle? Like, do people do that where you just like, I don't want to say an ad or mid roll, but
Yeah.
some kind of call to action? And then do you do at the end too? Is that common?
I do intros and outros. I also do record ads for people, but in my own podcast, I actually do have a call to action in the middle. In fact, I have two things that I put in the middle. To action because I have a downloadable PDF that is for free that people can download, and it puts them on a newsletter. If they don't want to go on the newsletter, they could just contact me directly, but that's the idea. And then I also have put together a bit of a thank you note kind of deal for people who have left interviews. I had the interview and I thank the person for doing the interview, or I read the review, pardon me, and I thank them for doing the review. And I'm just hoping that first of all, the person who left it understands and hears that I'm grateful, but also that maybe incentive for other people to leave a review because they might get it read on the show. You never know. So I thought that was a nice little thing to do. But then I also have an outro. So all that really does is say the show is over and you can love the regular, like it, share, that kind of deal.
Mhm.
Pretty simple.
So, and I think an intro is pretty common. I think most people understand that and not just come on and say hello, even
Yeah.
though I've done that before, depending on,
Yeah.
if something didn't work. But an outro, I honestly, and this is going to be episode, I don't know, 360 or something for the
Yeah.
podcast. I didn't even think about outros
Hmm.
until I was on the Dealcast or Amazon Live with those guys. And they had all kinds of stuff going on, even throughout the show. And
Sure.
then they had the outro, and I was like, oh, I got to think about how to do that, especially for the video version, right?
Hmm.
How do I
Yeah.
make that work? What are you seeing is working for an outro? I don't even know. I mean, now our outro is I'm Team Wave, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But like, what do I need to consider to have a good audio experience with an outro?
Well, it depends on what your show is about, obviously, but if you are not putting a call to action in the middle of your show, then you could put it at the end of the show in the outro. So if you want more information, go to this website. If you are interested in leaving us a review, you can go to Apple. You can find us on all of the usual channels for a podcast. If you like it, share with your friends. That would be really appreciated. These kinds of things. Anything that you want to mention at the end. The key, though, is to keep it short because
Hmm.
a lot of times people aren't even going to listen to the outro. It does put a nice little capper on the show, and I think that it's an important part. But if people are aware that they've already heard everything in the episode, they may or may not stick around. So have it there. It just makes things sound more professional. But
Yeah, I do agree with that. Ugh, I don't have any time to do anything else right now. But yeah, I guess I could just go to voiceovers and vocals.com and
you
file an
could.
order, and get it done that way. So maybe I'll have to do that. So it's interesting though. So 10 years or 10 seasons, I think, of Friends ran on TV, and this is
Mhm.
when we had TV, right? We actually had to watch TV,
Yeah.
and I had never watched the last 3 minutes of a single Friends episode in 10 years. Because
Wow.
when the
Yeah.
commercial, so I didn't watch any of those scenes until it came out on Netflix or I got the DVDs or whatever. And then I was like, I have never seen that before. My wife says, really? I'm like, I think that's like there's a commercial. So I
Yeah.
thought it's done. And I did that for 10 years.
Hmm.
And so, but I wonder on podcasts. So when I'm listening to podcasts, I'm getting to my question the long way here.
Okay.
So on a podcast, when I'm running a podcast, so I'm just playing the show on my computer in the background, I'm not sitting here trying to flip away as soon as it's done. Like I just have it running, and then when it's over, I'm like, oh, I got to start another podcast. So there
Hmm.
is actually a chance that people might hear the outro
Oh,
because
totally.
it's just in the background. They're not waiting to skip.
Yeah. It depends on how people are listening to it. And I think these days that's kind of changed. Like it used to be that people would do it, they'd listen while they were commuting. And now a lot of people are working from home or they're not working at all. So that kind of listening habit has changed. And I think actually, I know a lot of people who do it while they're exercising and they'll just keep it running, like you said. So it depends on how much you're paying attention at the time, but I think a lot of people listen to podcasts doing other things. This is another reason why audio is so important because you can listen to audio while you're doing other things, while you're washing the dishes, while you're doing the laundry, while you're commuting, while you're exercising, while you're doing anything. And that is a really efficient way to get your audio into your day. Whereas if you have to pay attention to a video, it's a little harder because you can't put your full attention on it, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's very true. And I listen to podcasts. So when I'm writing, when I have like a really heavy writing day, I don't have podcasts on. That's just too much going on in my head.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing like keyword research or I'm setting up a live stream or whatever, I'm listening to podcasts and I have them on my AirPods. And then basically I play them from my computer. But when I get
Mhm.
up and leave, I'm still listening and still doing other things. So that is certainly the power of audio. Now, your podcast, Audio Branding, the Hidden Gem of Marketing,
Mhm.
is available on Amazon. It's also available on Apple Podcasts.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So you guys can use your voice and just ask the digital assistants to play the podcast. So you probably will have to say, play Audio Branding, the Hidden Gem of Marketing podcast, and
Yes.
it will work. I'm a big fan of these voice devices, especially when they don't talk back to me and do what I want them to do. Jodi, it was fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for the to-do list to put those things on my radar to work on.
If I
I
can help,
will.
let me know.
You bet I will. And I will let my wife know that her audio passed the test, but my production did not. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. And so how do people just go to your website to reach out, or how do people connect with you?
Well, the website is voiceoversandvocals.com. So that is how you can reach me for any voiceover work, or you can find the podcast there too. But the podcast you can reach directly at audiobrandingpodcast.com.
And then you have links to like the 5,000 channels where podcasts.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. It's basically everywhere that you would listen to a podcast.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Awesome. It was great to have you on the show. Thanks for connecting. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge today with us and for making the time.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for watching.